Give that a second. And it's live. How's it going, guys?
Good.
Man,
Good. I mean, we're sitting on the dock.
yeah,
So,
we've decided to, go back in time just so we could podcast.
yep.
You tell me if we need to do anything different.
Yeah, I mean, look, this place is not on fire. Holy shit. So I mean, that's what we did on our first
Yeah,
podcast.
we are seeking attention in the opposite way.
We're good hordes, right? Question mark.
Yeah. Yeah, look at
Wait,
us. We
are we the
are.
baddies?
We have skulls on our armor.
It is true. I have
Oh,
a banshee on my chest.
I believe I might have killed some kind of dinosaur. It might have been the last one of its kind, and I
Yeah,
slapped it to my shoulder.
you're wearing
So,
bones.
yeah, well,
We're probably the bad guys.
I mean,
fuck.
if you look at Gary and I, we just look like menacing dragon people.
We do.
You know what though? It's called recycling. I'm fucking recycling.
Oh, speaking of recycling, well, let's talk about World of Warcraft right now. So I'm to the point where I'm starting to feel like every time they release a big patch in air quotes, uh, they literally just have a randomized button set with a phrase which is basically like champions fight X, then look for X, which releases X, and then in big bubble letters with parentheses around it, it just says repeat, and then right next to it is just a button that says randomize.
Well, I think so, except probably in its code, it's in a loop. So they've actually written all the code for everything, and then they're just fucking looping it with small changes within the code.
Well,
So, let's reloop everything with minor changes. And instead of one of our war chiefs going crazy, it's now another one, and another war chief is now dead. And then our quests are in an infinite loop. So,
it's that, or let's create an old god no one's ever heard of because it didn't exist until this moment.
yeah, true. Yeah, you know what? Yeah, exactly. Because we can retcon everything, and now there's 400 old gods that are stuck on this planet.
So, I watched a video earlier today that spoils 8.2, and I'm not gonna spoil it here. But I was just sitting there watching this thing, thinking, "Oh, we've done this before."
Exactly. It feels like there's no originality in WoW anymore.
Because in
What is it?
8.2,
It's Miss 2.0. Is that what we're
yeah,
trying to get
yeah,
to?
it really
It's
is.
Miss 2.0. So
A major
yeah,
lore character comes back, no spoilers, and then bad things happen. It's Miss 2.
yeah. So we're on Miss
Oh,
2.0,
hey, buddy.
and hey, what's up? Well, look, I got another pet, guys. Should I tame
Yeah, look at that.
it? Dude, he didn't even change into
Didn't
his
even
fucking
care.
aquatic form.
What a
Give a shit.
what a turd. He probably doesn't even have it, dude. He's
Oh,
still
no,
he's
he
still on
doesn't
the
even have
island.
bow.
You
Oh
don't
my
get the
god,
aquatic until you're like 18 in Darkshore.
Oh, shit, there's a level 20 NPC over there named Denlin.
I think yeah, that's the guy you've got to he gives you lots of quests. They're very different quests. You actually have to plant plants eventually,
Yeah.
and he has like this little thing to do it. So it's weird because obviously I started as a night elf and I did this area, but then I quested not too long ago in this night elf area on an alt, and things are a little different and very easy compared to fucking vanilla. Holy shit.
Well, yeah, because like I mentioned earlier off the cast, I started as a night elf. Like that's just Destaras was just a randomized name on a night elf, and I think I got to level 3 before a friend was just like, "Hey, come to Stormwind and level with me," and then I had to Google and walk like 8 hours in game to get to fucking Stormwind.
Really? Holy shit.
I'm just
Yeah,
saying back then it was probably Ask Jeeves.
it definitely was.
It probably, yeah, it probably was.
But it took 8 hours because like it was the first time I've ever played World of Warcraft, and it's like, well, where do I go? How do I get places? And the map wasn't revealed. So all I could see was Teldrassil. And it's like, I guess I'll just start asking people. And spoiler alert, people on the internet aren't very nice.
No, not at all. Although, when I started World of Warcraft, it was completely and totally different than it is nowadays. And the reason I say that is um, when I started, and my first character actually was named Zoeker as well, which means seeker in Dutch. So I thought it was a cool name for a hunter to be. Um, I started, and there were so many people willing to assist each other because you had to. At the beginning of, in vanilla and even into Burning Crusade and so forth, if you didn't have help, you couldn't do a lot of quests. Like even getting out of the starting area here in this Night Elf zone, good freaking luck. And then getting over into this area was the first time where you're like, holy shit, I need 5 people to to do
Yeah,
quests.
to
This is
do this.
insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, yeah, I say like people on the internet aren't nice. That doesn't mean like I didn't have a good time doing it.
Yeah.
Well, back
There
then
were
too.
people who would help, but like I didn't really get lots of help until I got in a guild.
So
And
back
and
then,
then
oh, go ahead.
I would say guilds then versus now were so different.
Oh god, yeah. Well, I got incredibly lucky to be in a world's top guild in vanilla due to the fact of I started with a buddy who had started I was going to be a horde, except he and his brother-in-law who worked at Blizzard, which is actually how I got in so quickly and I had saw beta and everything is through him. And he's like, well, I started a priest, a dwarf priest, because he knew dwarf priests were going to be incredibly
Yeah, OP.
needed. So he started dwarf priest, and he ran him over. He was like level 15 or 16 by the time I actually like was questing through this area, which was incredibly nice. Um, and I started Zoeker, a night elf uh, hunter over here. But holy cow, it was our guild started because we started finding people that we were questing with, and we're like, well, hey, you're already high enough level. Run to a major city. Let's create a guild, and then we started combining guilds, and it created just a monster of a guild where we were running at at its high point. We're running 5 40-man groups for
Damn.
raids. It was
Jesus.
absolutely fucking insane. So it was fantastic. I mean, obviously that
So real
tailed
quick,
off and stuff, but
well, we should come up with a name.
So yeah,
So
let's discuss why we don't currently have a name first.
so we originally wanted to have the podcast called the Deep Run Trams Brawlers Guild. And that was because the first time we floated this idea was before they reintroduced the Brawlers Guild in patch 8.1.5. And so we kind of just went in there, and it was a great place because not a lot of stuff was in there. We could be not flagged for PvP, and we could just sit at the bar in this hostile zone. And so a big part of why we wanted to show up on at places that weren't friendly was just to have an interesting place to show and talk about. And so Gary and I just went to the Deep Run Tram, and it was not good.
No,
We
we were immediately ambushed.
we went in there and like the first time we went in there we fought a couple things, no big deal, and we just sat down and all was good. And this time we went in there and pulled like 30 mobs. We went back to the corner of the bar and the mobs kept respawning. There were like 5 people in a brawl, and this little twerp of a rogue comes up and is like, "I'm going to kill some hordes," and he was not successful until the 5 people got done with their brawl and then murdered Gary and shortly me. And
yeah,
so we had to relocate.
it was a perfect place. It was where we first ended up, the three of us hanging out, BSing, was in a fantastic place in Ironforge, kind of the hidden old Ironforge that isn't as hidden as it used to be. And we were hanging out there and got the awesome idea to go into the Deep Run Tram and see, where we could get to. And unfortunately, now everything is flagged as PvP. So yeah, that's I guess
And well, with like this cast we're doing now, it actually goes back further back past old Iron Forge. I mean, like this all really just came about when me and Pete were wasted 3 hours walking around the garrison in Draenor.
That yeah, I mean, we saw a guy doing squats nonstop. I
That
mean,
one
you can't
NPC
freaking beat
peon.
that at 12 in the fucking morning. So yeah, we have one of our guys doing squats, not working at all, occasionally getting yelled at by one of the other guys. But yeah, that was pretty cool. And then also, you could go to the docks there and see things die. So
Yeah,
it,
weird
So
phasing issues.
how about just floating the idea, garrison squatters?
garrison squatters.
Garrison squatters.
That's actually it's a hilarious one. A lot of people
Hmm.
would wonder what the heck it meant. Yeah, garrison squatters.
Yeah. I do. I don't know if I like the word garrison. I do like the word squatters.
Hmm. Meanwhile, this night elf's just what?
Is
He's
this
just
the one
looking
that
at
was
all of
there
us.
This
before?
is the one that was. He's.
No, this is a different one. This is a
Oh
different
no,
one.
no, no, it
Yeah,
is.
the other one was
Apparently,
darker,
there's
wasn't it?
only
Yeah.
druids. Oh, there's the other one
There's
back
the other
there.
one. Oh,
They're apparently talking to each other in the back there.
and they're just looking at us menacingly.
I guess so. I mean, you guys do know that you have Cultirans. You can. Oh yeah, no one wants to level as a Cultiran. Okay, makes sense. So I would level
Maybe
as a druid
unwelcomed
as well.
squatters.
The
'Cause
unwelcome squat. That's actually that might be good, especially the
That's not
places
so
that we have been
bad.
at. That makes sense. Because I think I was not even welcome in my own garrison, which I just went back to recently, and it still has Christmas decorations up. So you you think shit's bad in real life where people don't take down Christmas decorations? Well, my garrison has had Christmas decorations for years on end now. So yeah.
Always festive. Your being away is something to be celebrated.
Exactly. Apparently, I should have left up the Halloween, festivities, but no, I decided that Christmas apparently is where it's at in my garrison.
Yeah, whenever I walk in there, because of that jukebox that's in the garrison, it's always playing the Wrath of the Lich King
Oh, beautiful,
boss music.
beautiful. I have what one do I have? I think it might be a night elf one. Just like I said, I'm stuck in the past apparently, but
No, I mean
it's either
the
that
Night
one
Elf
or there's
starting
a
zone music is great.
yeah.
it is good.
The starting zone music here, I
So
always reminisce about this
before
one. This
before
one
we
is
get too deep into that,
Yeah,
because
sorry.
we're gonna yeah we got
Oh,
Wiggly
look!
Bite here,
Hey, a
Wiggy Bite.
hunter! A hunter! We finally have
Oh,
something different than a druid. So we've had what 3 druids pass us by, and now a hunter. But
There's
of
a
course, he
druid
has the druid
moonfiring
as a
behind
pet.
this hill.
Yes, yeah, I see the moonfire back there.
yeah.
So
And actually, I think that's the first one that was had run past us. So
meanwhile, these guys are all concerned. So the next thing I want to get out of the way, and then we can get deep into the first characters who made and whatnot, and reminisce about the olden days. Was I want each of one of us to introduce ourselves, tell us about ourselves, our main class, rating history, stuff like that.
Ooh.
So.
Ooh,
Uh,
some of our lists are going to be shorter than others.
I'll go ahead and I'll go first because it's not as impressive as Pete's. So you'll hear us talk to each other by our first names. We're all real life friends and have been writing together for years. My name is Scott. Zoeker is Pete. Destaras is Gary. I am currently maining a Death Knight and have mained a Death Knight since Wrath of the Lich King on and off. I primarily rated in Vanilla, Burning Crusade, Wrath of the Lich King, and then Warlords of Draenor, and I skipped the first half of Legion and then Current. Uh, Outside of that, I was primarily active in Wrath of the Lich King. That's when I did a lot of my major achievements, and we can go into that at another time. And then that's where I got my Arena Master title that's like right there, front and center in the screen. So outside of WoW, I primarily train Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and then yell at my cats. Uh, I have a bachelor's degree in computer science and I work for a defense contractor as an automation engineer. So yeah, that's about me. Who's next?
Good accolades, Pete. I'm going to let you bring up the rare, only because I don't want to look so bad after you beat me with your list. But yeah, so I'm Gary. I currently main a warrior. It's actually the same character I started World of Warcraft with. Started as a night elf, transferred it to human, transferred it to an orc, transferred it back to human, went back to an orc. It's been with me since forever. I've tried other classes, but nothing is as good as a warrior, obviously. But uh, when I first started raiding was probably Burning Crusade. It would have been at the end of it because BC was released as I was just hitting level 40. I did just the tail end of the Black Temple, and I didn't really start to think raiding was fun until Full Wrath. And then I gave up on Cataclysm. And then I would say, well, when did you join the guild? That was what, Draenor?
Yeah, it was Blackrock Foundry and Draenor.
Yeah, I'd say it probably wasn't till Highmaul and Blackrock stuff that I really got into raiding. So I guess the both of you have kind of been around for what would be my main raiding days. But other than that, like I I kind of do whatever Scott does and Pete do in the game. But outside of it, I've got a bachelor's in history with a minor in politics. I do random construction work jobs and whatnot. And well, I spend most of my time playing freaking video games because show me anything else that's better in this world.
You're
And that's
also a
my
damn good DM for D&D.
I do the D&D do the D&D stuff.
Yeah, so
I appreciate you saying I'm good at it because
yeah,
my players will never say it.
I will. And the last thing I will mention too is we will be leveraging a lot of your history buff knowledge because it's just a fun topic to talk about.
Oh, it is. I love history. So, and the fun fact earlier today when Pete was telling me about Peaky Blinders, um, I I had to stop myself from correcting a lot of history stuff that he was saying. No
Yeah.
offense, Pete.
No. I mean but that's how it's set up in Peaky Blinders as well. So obviously some of it is off.
No,
Um,
you got me
it's
interested in it. So,
no,
but
it is. It's interesting. Some of the history, obviously, from me saying things were incorrect, but also from the show itself. But the show is fairly accurate. Like if you watch it, it's uh, I have a massive issue with a lot of shows though that are back there, and everybody has incredibly white, beautiful fucking teeth and great skin,
yeah,
and
it's not true to history. But we're getting a little
yeah,
off topic.
oh, yeah,
But
yeah, completely
So,
off topic. So
Pete, you are probably our oldest active raider and probably the best raider that we have.
yeah,
So
hands
go,
down. So,
go ahead and introduce yourself.
So I have been playing quite some time since vanilla. So I have started playing. I've been incredibly lucky to be in very good guilds. I've been in Death and Taxes. I've been in Strawberry Puppy Kisses. I've been in some really yeah, some really stupid named
uh,
ones, but we have been all competing
it,
for world first. My first was a Zoeker, and he was a night elf. It was on a completely different. Everything is completely different. So I don't have the old Zoeker by any means. Unfortunately, I should get in there and combine it and get the old Zoeker. So I have. Um, I was able to at one point in time. I hit the top for PvP in vanilla because our guild farmed it nonstop. And what was awesome back then is if a group that you were facing saw that you were top, they just sat in there. Like, let's take Arathi Basin, for instance. They just sat back in their little hovel and you went and attacked and you destroyed them within a minute. And you won. I mean, that's
yeah,
all you
they
did was
they
just
played defensive because they didn't want to
they
get.
didn't even play defensive. They just sat in their hut and ended up just getting killed and wanting to die as fast as possible so that they could then move on and then we could move on as well. And on larger servers, both when I was on Frostwolf and then some of the other servers that I was on, Um, that
So, so
so
Pete,
yes.
go ahead and tell us about your education, hobbies, careers, stuff like that.
All right. So education. I was in the military for a while. Went as combat control, changed over to intel. Uh, Once I got out of there, I have worked at several different places and went to the University of Denver and got my degree from there. I've worked in IT for quite some time. I'm currently working in medical research, so a lot of research on cancers and other things. So it's fairly cool. That's what I do mainly for work. It's pretty nice, especially now that I'm working from home. So that helps out quite a bit. Spare time. Used to play a lot of baseball. Now I'm getting old and lazy
Old and
to say.
lazy.
So a lot more video game playing and hanging out with the family, um, and not nearly as much baseball or football as I used to play. But you know, um, some weights. That's pretty
Yeah,
much me.
gotta stay in shape.
Pretend to.
So,
Motions.
Yeah, exactly.
we'll go ahead. We'll talk about our first characters and go into that a little bit in depth. For me, I first rolled an undead warrior because I was waiting for my friend to get off of school to tell me where to go. And so I rolled an undead warrior and I was like, "Oh, I'm eating this dead dude. This is fun." And I actually really enjoyed that cuz I'm a bit of an edge lord, really like metal music if you can't tell
Yeah.
by my name. And then he logged on and so my second character was a night elf druid. And so I played a night elf druid all the way till like level into the 20s, and I distinctly remember the lake that we are sitting at right now, and that's kind of why I picked it. Um, Outside of that, I then rolled a shaman because we were like, ah man, we're kind of bored of night elves, so we wanted to do horde, and so I rolled uh, a troll shaman on thrall. Got to 40, and then my real life buddy was like, "Hey, come play over on Wildhammer," and so Pete knows that one quite well. And I rolled an orc shaman, and that was my main all the way from vanilla through BC. And then when Wrath of Lich King came out, I rolled the edgiest class possible as the Death Knight and mained a Death Knight until currently.
That is true. I can vouch for that. He is very much edgelord.
Hashtag.
Yeah, hashtag edgelord.
So
Uh,
the my main was Zeeth, was orc shaman, and so that's why you saw me name change my current shaman to that, and he's in our guild right now.
yeah.
So
I guess should I go next?
yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah. Say, I'm playing my original character that I made. Obviously, I've had a lot of race changes and a faction changes in there, but I was introduced to World of Warcraft through a mutual friend. Well, of all of ours now. I say before it would have been just me and Scott, but now a mutual friend of all of ours, and I was over at his place, and he was telling me about it, and I was not interested in it at all. He made me this character, and I played it to like level 2, and then I eventually got back into it because he made me want to play it. And then, as I mentioned earlier, I had to go all the way to Stormwind to play with him, and then he just leveled without me. So that was always an issue. But after BC dropped and I started doing stuff like that, I got bored with the warrior for a little bit. And the second character I ever made was a hunter because the server I was on was high populace, whatever it was, whatever
Yeah,
it's
back
called.
then it was high.
Yeah, I say, and it was full a lot. So I went to a lower population server and I made a hunter, which I named after my great grandfather through his last name, which is called and still called Von Ritter. And I got him to level 60 before I went back to my warrior, and well, from there I just kind of played my warrior up until Cataclysm, and then just kind of stopped playing for a while. Let my brother take control of my warrior, and eventually I came back and wrestled it back, and that's basically when I met you guys. I say, I think I went through Panda stuff without you guys, but then we met up in Draenor and we kind of went from there.
Yeah,
But
we all kind of started raiding together back in what was it, Draenor and Blackrock Foundry, because our mutual friend, I think the same one you mentioned, got me to come back, and then I got Pete to come back with a couple of other buddies.
yep. When we had
Yep.
Diablo join us for a while.
Yep.
Yep. So he came back, and then you two talked me back into it, and it actually came at a perfect time because you guys were just stuck at that point in time, and bringing as fast as you guys geared us, which was a good thing, is we not only busted down the wall where you guys were stuck at, we then destroyed the rest of everything, and things were very nice. It was also awesome because at that point in time, we had what six of us in the guild that were all 95th percentile plus, and what we had at least 3 or 4 that were 100th percentile on every freaking fight. So it was awesome. It was amazing.
Yeah, just with the three of us here, like we were all extremely high ranked for our classes. I mean, unfortunately for you, Pete, you're a hunter, and there's thousands of hunters. Like that is an overclassed class. No offense,
No, no,
but like
it definitely is. It's in because it's so there's several reasons. Part of which is people love to have an extra pet to run around because that's cool and all. But the other thing is overall, especially survival this time around, is ridiculously easy to play. Beastmaster is very easy to play but hard to master, but you can do decent enough damage by being mediocre. So
Well, on top of that, you're even with the high population of hunters, you still score very regularly in the 95th plus
oh yeah,
percentile.
you got best raider tighter in our guild easily. Like a lot of us are good, but like we're not Pete good.
We always,
We actually
yeah,
use you as like
the
our
benchmark.
yes. Like if anyone is even close to being extremely good, they're like right below you.
well, a lot of that though also is just I've played Hunter for so damn long, and that everything is like intuitive. Like even if they change things up, like obviously, I've played Marksman, I switched to Beastmaster, I switched to Marksman, I switched to whatever survival back when I actually fucking liked it back in WAD. Um, it's just everything is very intuitive. Like even switching like to my Demon Hunter or anything else like that, it's not as intuitive. It's just I've played so long, and it's nice and easy. And with you, Gary, you've switched from being a top
Ah,
DPS to our tank. So I mean that's a huge switch as well. And then with Scott, uh, he's calling Scott's numbers are fantastic. They're great.
yeah, they
They'd
just
be
keep
even
going down.
better if somebody else was calling everything out and not having to pay attention to everything in progression stuff. And you
Yes.
see, once we're past progression, we're going back. All of a sudden, you're seeing Scott just absolutely, destroy the numbers. So,
Oh yeah, I mean we've all made sacrifices. I mean that just comes with we're the veterans in the guild now. I mean there's only what 5 of us from that core group from Draenor
Yeah,
that's really left.
we're all officers, and we're the
yeah,
leadership of the guild.
yeah,
But that's just the natural progression of like of an organization over time. Like the top people eventually rolled out for one reason or another. Then the people who have been there longest move up, and it just keeps going. And we're currently in charge. And then eventually, when we stop playing, then whoever stays in after us has been there for a while is just going to move on up. But yeah, Pete's right. Like Scott is. I used to do DPS with Scott all the time. It was. I don't know if you considered it a rivalry, but I definitely used you as my foil. Like
I think that's the
if
best
your
thing.
numbers went up,
That's
I had to up my numbers.
that's
it was a good competitive friendliness.
Yeah, no, like I was always happy when your numbers were high, but it gave me it gave me something to shoot for. Like if you were beating me, that means I needed to up my numbers. And
Eh,
then even in a time where well, Death Knights were broken for a while, and you were putting out massive numbers, like just at the click of a button. Like I was still aiming to be up there, and in the end, you, me, and I think two other people were ranked in the top 10 of our classes for a good few months, solidly.
Yeah, I remember this was another topic that I have on the list for us to discuss is our favorite raid of all time. And while it's not my favorite raid, it was my second favorite raid was Hellfire Citadel. And at that
Mhm.
point, I was doing a massive amount of research on the side of how to do better as a Death Knight, reading literally top logs of all the top players, and I was just outbeating everyone while being slightly undergeared. And so I was consistently either number one or number two DPS for every fight except for one or two.
Oh yeah,
And it was good because it gave you that drive to do better because you did want me to beat you. And so there were several fights where you just completely dominated it. You just destroyed everyone's numbers, you destroyed my numbers, and it was usually down to if there was AoE or if there was a single
single
target.
target.
And at that
Yeah,
time I was much more powerful single target.
yeah, and like you said, my second favorite raid would probably have to be Hellfire because almost specifically that Iskar fight where the mechanics of the fight was like you need to break up your group and half of your DPS has to be AoE and the other half has to like focus single target. Where the three of us who are sitting here, like we were the AoE. Like that was it. We didn't need the rest of the raid to do it.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was, and honestly, I think we all look back at Hellfire
Fondly,
maybe
I would say fondly.
incredibly
I
fondly,
look at it fondly.
and maybe not so much as it was a fantastic raid put together compared to some of the other ones. And I do like it. Don't get me wrong. I thought it was a really good, but it also was where we kind of all came together. And that was something like Scott brought me back in. Like Scott and Casey brought me back in, and I had quit playing after. God, I got really pissed off after I think Blackrock Foundry because survival was getting nerfed to the ground, and it was one of my favorite specs and playstyle that I've ever had as a hunter, and I absolutely loved it. And then all of a sudden, it just got kicked in the teeth, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna sit out for a while. Enough's enough. And then when they brought me back in, I was like, fuck yeah, I'm in. I've got real life buddies that I'm playing with. I mean, obviously, um, we played together again, but now we're all in the same guild. The guild was, guild was tight. Like, it was fantastically fun. I mean, shit.
That was the time period
I
where
it was
we
so fun.
it was a time period where we really started jiving well as a group. We started communicating a little better, except for Santos. Shitting on you, Santos. Calling you out, bitch. But that's where a lot of our hive mind antics started, was because I was not raid leader. I was just promoted to officer.
We were lowly DPS.
Yeah, and
That's what we
so
were.
I got away with being just a massive shitlord, and I just remember we would do stuff purposefully just to piss off our guild leader at that point, and just being trolls. That's where, like, if you look at Gary and I right now, we have our dragon armor on, and we coined the phrase "dragon bro," and
Oh,
other crazy antics like our dance party and shit like that. And so
yeah, I mean, we got moves so sick that they're terminal.
that's why we named our dance team the Undead.
Bam.
And so that's where a massive amount of our like bonding happened, was in that raid. Even though the raid may not have been super special, it was special to us, and I think that was what was so important about it.
Yeah, like it was a good event that like you both said now, like it really did bond us together. It created what would become the core raiding group for the next
Years.
yeah, like it
Yeah,
it kept
yeah.
us together just through friendship. And then eventually like I met Scott, oh hell, what, not too long afterwards. After Draenor, I don't think.
Yeah, because I went to uh, Mike's place,
Yeah.
and we all hung out.
Yeah, and say then I met you then, and then eventually I would move away from the town.
And I would still visit you.
Yeah, and we'd see each other more, like not as often as we probably could have or we probably should have, but we're adults. That's just how shit works.
Quick side note. I actually want to bring up the point where Pete mentioned that he worked in IT for a long time, and my first real job, quote unquote, that wasn't fast food. I worked for public schools in my hometown as a summer help intern or something like that, and that's where I met Pete. And Pete was like at that time like the scariest dude in the office. He just looked like he was ready to snap and beat someone up. It was awesome. And he's just this he's like this 5'6" angry bearded man, just 5 o'clock shadow ready to
I
roll.
went to the doctor yesterday and they said I'm 5'9.5".
Yeah,
So,
well, you just look so much
believe
shorter
that.
than me, so
I don't believe that for one
Soles
bit.
on or
But
like without.
no. I actually had taken my my shoes off and everything to get measured, and
Nice.
and I looked at them and I was like, wait a second. I was like, I think you might be off. But of course, when I was in the military, they measured me anywhere from 5'8.5" to 5'11". Every time they said
right.
5'11", I looked straight at them and I was like, "That you're full of shit."
I just
If
remember.
I was at 5'11", I would be complaining that I'm not at 6 foot.
Yeah,
I
no.
right now would be happy to be fucking 5'11", but I am not fucking 5'11".
Yeah,
I get it. Like I used to tell people at work because when I went to the hospital like for checkups and whatnot, they measure your height like you said. They said I was 5'10". Like don't get me wrong, 5'10" is not super tall, but for years I thought I was 5'10". Go to work and I mentioned it once. So many tape measures came out.
right.
It's insane. Like I actually usually knock myself down more, and I'm like, no, I'm 5'8". And even my wife is like, you're not 5'8". You're like, you're closer to 5'9". And I was like, yeah, but you know what? When people have been telling you 5'10", 5'11", and stuff like that, I'm more truthful to where I know I am at than So it's really weird.
So that's always weird too because I was always told I was like 5'11", and I think I'm like about that height, but I'm pushing 6 foot, but I'm not quite there. But I never really like the measurements always range from like, oh, you're 5'11" and a half or something crazy to like you're 5'8", and I'm like, I am not 5'8",
yeah, dude,
because I tower over Pete.
yeah, it's the spectrum is absolutely insane. So it's absolutely stupid, where people are like, oh, this and that, and I'm like, they're pushing down on my head even the other day, and I was like, no, you're definitely fucking wrong.
Why can't
So I
we
was
just
like,
measure like all heights and hands like horses? I mean,
just really quick, right? That would be amazing.
can we just get like a standard like length here? Because apparently inches just ain't cutting it.
Well, when they were measuring them, I should have asked them to measure my penis as well. I was like, since
Oh,
you're
don't worry, you're
up
like
there,
you're like a
They're
solid
small enough.
10 inches. It's like a cheese wheel size girth.
they're
Just
like, holy Jesus, this thing's like 16 feet. And I was like, do you mean 16 centimeters? Are you screwing up here? So,
Yeah,
I could have
just-
taken that, and came home
you just look at it and be like, stop measuring my leg.
My problem is I have really fat, thick thighs. So like, if you see, like, I'm not kidding you.
All right,
Thighs
thunder thighs.
fucking massive. So when I got married, like even my wife was like, "Jesus Christ, your thighs are huge." And I was like, "I know, I've always had massive thighs." It's like, but that also is one of the reasons that I've played really high level baseball is because I can drive the ball big time.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, it's all in the hips.
Yeah, it's all in the hips.
There.
It's all in the hips.
It really is.
God damn, I've got big fucking hips and a fat ass, so that helps out. I've got a running back's body, so a little tall. And
It's interesting because I had I took a small break in Legion because I was kind of tired of like some guild politics and I was actually training to do an MMA fight. And one of my buddies was like a baseball player and he was having such a hard time with his footwork because of the way like you have to stay static with your hips. And so because you're playing baseball and so the way that he would move his hips was just not how you're supposed to move it during boxing, right? And so he had to get
Yep.
past that.
It's
But
weird because I started boxing at a very young age because my dad was a Golden Gloves champ. Well, not overall, but in the state. And so he got me into boxing at a young age. And then I moved into baseball and I was good at baseball. But then I tried fucking golf, dude.
Oh god.
Completely and totally screwed up everything because it's a very different movement. And here I am hacking away at the golf ball, and I was like, "What the fuck?" So after playing golf for a while, then trying to go back to baseball, holy shit,
see,
everything was off.
as
So
as an adult, go ahead.
I was actually a really good golfer in high school. I actually joined the golf team, and I would go to tournaments and do extremely well. But like I get where you're coming from, Pete. Like going from baseball to golf because my father always pushed me to be like my older brother, who is a extremely good athlete. But I just didn't get those kind of genes. So like years and years of baseball, and then finally being able to stop and then switch to golf, got the swing fixed and whatnot to play golf, and then just like trying to introduce my friends into it. Like I saw that whole struggle. Like it's like, oh god, and it's like, no, it's not baseball. Don't swing level, swing down.
Yeah,
Well,
it's
when I
so
when I when we visited you, Gary, we actually went golfing, and you were like the guy on the court for us.
And you know what's? I felt so bad for about that too, because I know the entire time I remember going, and I don't remember everything we talked about, but I know for a fact I probably repeatedly said like, I'm really not that good.
Yeah, you kept saying that, and we were like, Gary, you're smashing us. Meanwhile, Mike and I are trying to run each other over with a golf cart.
Oh god,
that's
yeah. But that was when I was getting free golf. But
Oh,
Yeah.
dude, that's all. I went out here golfing a while ago with a buddy of mine, actually a couple buddies of mine, and then one dude I hadn't met before but was a good friend of a couple other ones. He was an amateur golfer and he could have went pro except that he was like, I'm good enough to be the very bottom pro, which means I don't make shit for money and I don't ever see my family. He was next level amazing. Like here we are. Like I hit the one thing with golf for me is all it takes is one hole. If you do something good on one hole, you're like, oh yeah, damn, did you see that? And that brings you back the next time.
yep.
This dude on every hole was absolutely smashing it. And on the one hole, he was like, oh, dude, that was a really good hit. And I was like, yeah, did you see that shit? That was my one good over 18 fucking
Yeah,
holes.
a good
Where,
270-yard drive. It's like, man,
yeah,
that was really good. Like you're all hyped up, and he's over here chipping on from 200 yards
oh,
off.
it's absolutely insane. Like the dude was just so good, and you're like, man, this is embarrassing. I was like, I know I don't play golf, and I hardly ever pick up a club, but good God, this guy is just. And that was where the discussion eventually went is why are you not playing at a higher level? And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
where everything came up.
So
And he's like, it's just when you're the bottom of the good, the bottom of the good isn't all that great if you are married, you have kids, and
sacrificing
things like that.
everything.
Exactly. So
Yeah, say
that was
not worth it.
his thought process. And at the time, I had no kids, I had no family, no anything. So I was like, shit, I'd do it. But
So
obviously, I'm not good.
that's when that's kind of why I focus a lot more on like combat sports nowadays is because I every other sport I just play as hard as I can, and that means I swing the golf club as hard as I can, I throw the bowling ball as hard as I can. I have no skill, no coordination. I just try to lob that thing like a dumb orc, and it makes for some funny scenarios.
Yeah, say golf's not about the strength, and I could never get that past. I could never get that through to Mike, and he had asked me so many times to help him with his golfing stuff, and I won't go get too deep into it. Like I did, I went out with him a lot, and we just went to the range, and I tried to fix his swing, and he was making progress,
Probably
but it
wasn't
was
as fast as he wants it.
it wasn't. And like I told him, it's like this is a long time. I've been golfing like I'd have years of golf experience, and then when I joined it in high school, like it was I could finally just do it every day. so I could just build on what I already had. He had none, and then
And
just
so he's
wanted,
starting from the bottom,
yeah, he wanted it to be where I was, and it's like it's not going to be that. You can't do it that quick.
Yeah, and I think the same can be said for a lot of different aspects of life. I mean, for shit, if you mentioned the dude being an amateur and just be absolutely killing it, and I think that's the way a lot of sports are these days, is because our population's growing. We have so many people doing it from such a young age that if
Oh,
you aren't
and
doing it when you're before you're 10 years old, you're probably not going to catch up. Like the example I have is MMA fighters. Like amateur MMA fighters have been nowadays, if they're good, they've been training some form of a combat art since before they were in middle school. And
Oh,
so,
yeah, it's all about that conditioning.
like an amateur MMA fighter could take out 99% of the human race one on one.
yeah, it's crazy because they're training in different styles. Because when back when you saw Gracie, that was amazing. But nowadays that wouldn't work because a guy with a good wrestling foundation would absolutely nullify what he's trying to accomplish because you have been trained since an early age of how do you take out somebody with jiu-jitsu. Well, you have a very strong wrestling background and you know how to do that, and so if he's trying to get you down, you know how to stay on top of him. And not only that, but you probably have some kind of either boxing or kickboxing, hopefully, background, especially if you
So
start at a young age, to keep it on the feet if need be as well.
I
So,
I, I mean, so even if we take a look, the last thing I want to mention with combat sports and then link back into some other items, but
Yeah,
if you look at all the champions of like the UFC right now, we got Henry Cejudo, Olympic gold medalist wrestler, bantamweight PED popped TJ Dillashaw, uh, was Cody Garbrandt, who was a wrestler, but he was primarily a boxer. I don't know Max's background. Habib Nurmagomedov is a phenom of grappling, probably the best grappler on the planet right now. Kamaru Usman went to my alma mater, University of Nebraska Kearney. He's a wrestler out of there, and I mean Daniel Cormier was an Olympic. Uh, what do they call it? Standby. I think he actually did
yeah.
compete in the Olympics and didn't take home gold, but he's an Olympic level wrestler. So you get that good wrestling foundation. All these guys have been doing it their entire lives. Like there's videos of Khabib Nurmagomedov wrestling with a bear, literally. Like you try to put that on and put that into a ring with someone who's been doing jujitsu for like got their purple belt after 5 years. Like Khabib's gonna smash the shit out of
Oh,
him.
they're gonna. I mean,
I mean, he fought Connor, and Connor's actually a brown belt, and I know a lot of people don't know that, but that's a high-ranking Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and Khabib made him
well,
look
here's
like
the
an
thing with
amateur.
Connor also is Connor's striking is really not that good. He's got away with a lot of really shit foot play, and this is coming from a boxing background. So when you're going into MMA, things change completely because you have to. Well, you
Well,
have to look out
so
for not
he,
just the hands, but you're looking out for the feet. You're looking out for a takedown, everything else. He made him look like his little girl
yeah,
by
so
beating him down.
to give Connor credit though, he is probably, I would give him the number two spot in absolute distance management. He's the master of distance, and that's anyone who's going to go into striking and a fighting, they have to be very, very, very good at distance measuring. The number one is Anderson Silva, which we all know during his heyday was in the
Oh
fucking
God,
Matrix. And
he
then
was
Connor, like
amazing.
he's got the best distance management for his weight class. It
I
just
think
doesn't
Connor's better,
matter.
and I think Connor ran into the same problem as Mike Tyson. Too
Yeah,
much publicity, too young,
yeah.
and who gives a fuck? And I mean, Mike Tyson was obviously God during his time, and you look back and you're like, yeah, well, you didn't beat a who's who of everybody, but Jesus, he was the scariest man on the planet. Like when you look at him across the ring, you're like, yeah, I'm probably gonna die. But you know, his trainer dies, the best trainer he ever freaking had in his life. All of a sudden, his life is going wacko, and he's out of control because he doesn't have a guy that actually is there being like
He didn't have a
pulling him
father
back.
figure in his life. It was his trainer.
Exactly.
It
And
was
now
his coach.
Connor, he's got shit tons of money. Dana White is sucking his cock just to have him do anything and everything that he will for the UFC because he brings in so much money. And so all of a sudden, I mean, you think about that, any of us at that point in time, especially, you know, when you're younger and you get money thrown at you, you're like, holy shit. And then all of a sudden you do think you're bigger and better than what you are, and that gets to your head, and the next thing you know, you're laying on the mat.
And then Habib don't care.
And Khabib doesn't give a shit. He's just gonna beat the flying fuck out of you. And thank God for Conor that he didn't fight a big time puncher, because he could have been laying on the mat, knocked the fuck out. So I mean,
Dude, when he lost that fight to Habib fucking out of nowhere just fucking haymaker from I don't know, from fucking Hades, and just blasts him.
yeah,
It was like the hardest punch Conor's been hit with.
With Conor also, he fought the weakest puncher in all of UFC, Diaz. I can't punch a fucking fly out, and he almost.
Diaz is a good
Conor.
boxer, though.
He's a good boxer, but he's incredibly weak. Like, it's just like, I'm going to slap
Pillow
you
hands, yeah.
fucking
Dude,
times.
don't even talk shit about the Stockton slap.
No-
that
not-
shit's
not
amazing.
to interrupt.
Go ahead.
But it's not going to knock anybody out.
Go ahead, Gary.
Dude, you just hit
Not
my
to,
fucking
not to
5-year-old.
interrupt this, like I'm glad you guys have got this, but we need to loop back.
So
And not only because I know very little about what is currently being mentioned.
well, I'll loop back with that. And so what I was trying to get at is all these guys have been training all their lives. And so when you look at someone who's an amateur golfer, who I work with an amateur golfer, and he's just next level good because he's been doing it for so damn long. Like, you can't catch up to that. And so I think that translates to a lot of different areas in life. And so today and nowadays, whether it be sports or anything else, if you want to get good at something, you got to start young. I mean, I know I started WoW really young. I was like, what, 14 or something like that. And I'm decent, but I'm not pro. I'm not rating with method or anything like that. And that just goes to, that's just a testament of like how good people are these days, and how the training is not like just go harder. The training, the bite down on your mouthpiece and train harder doesn't work as well as like all the data gathering we have nowadays, all the intelligent strategies, the knowledge base is growing, and so you put kids that are learning all of these things and being fed this information while training these skills from such a young age, they just become next level monsters.
Oh yeah.
And in golf, you could say that of baseball, football. I mean, football, you start in fucking middle school, and oh, there
Yeah.
goes Pete.
Oh, he didn't move.
No. Oh shit! I logged off. I'll
Yep.
be damned.
You should have stood up. I'm gonna say
I
you
Yep,
did.
should.
that's what Gary and I do.
Goddamn legs.
I should probably do that again.
I'm gonna do that.
I'm going to stand up, and then I'm going to use a couple of toys that I just got. That's what I was doing over on the Alliance side, because I saw there's 2 toys that I could get over there. So
Yeah. What else was on that list you had, Scott?
So we talked about ourselves. We talked a little bit about our favorite raids, but we didn't go too deep into that. And I think Gary and I went on our first characters, and
yeah.
Pete
First
kind of did
character-
earlier. So
First character was Zoeker, then I changed some things. I went over to Death and Taxes, which obviously I started on Frost Wolf, and then I went to Korgoth to go with Death and Taxes. I was playing a lot during that time, a ridiculous amount. Like, I will say, there's times where I was playing 80 hours a fucking week, maybe longer.
oh yeah,
Because
I've
at
done that
point,
too.
You had to
Grind,
you had to grind. Everything was a grind. Like, and it was incredibly
potions,
difficult
food.
because you had to bring so much into the raid with you, and it was fantastic. I mean,
I think
it was great. It was fun. I loved it. And then, obviously, once I moved into certain other ones later on, I played on some lesser guilds, and it was fun. And then I moved back into guilds competing for
world first.
I would say U.S. first, not
Okay.
world first. Strawberry Puppy
Well,
Kisses.
back then
obviously,
Europe
fucking-
wasn't big.
Well, Europe was still kicking our ass. Like, back when I think of when I think of the top guilds, it was obviously us with Death and Taxes. There was like Forte. There was some other, but they were EU. But Nihilium, they were a
Yeah.
they were a badass EU guild, and I believe they were a horde, and they were kicking the shit out of us at times, and then we kicked the shit out of them, and so it was, but it's very different than now. Like when we started, we didn't have any fucking clue. We didn't have any reference points. We didn't go anywhere. I mean, obviously you went to like Alakazam or some of these other ones, but it wasn't like, hey, here's the
10
greatest
ton
build.
hammer.
Exactly. Here's the fucking greatest build
That's
ever.
some nostalgia.
You didn't have any of that. Like
On fucking
nowadays,
Internet Explorer.
Netscape, baby, Netscape. So,
They'd
I mean,
mail you
especially back then,
CDs.
oh, well, apparently this sends out a death ball. And
Oh, there's
oh,
a
do you
ghost.
guys see? Oh, there's a ghost in front of me.
There is a
Sorry,
ghost.
yeah, I had to pop that because I just got that from my Alliance character.
So
But yeah, I mean, things were very different back then. I loved WoW. I played the hell out of WoW, way too much, like way too much at that point in time. So I've tried to cut it back some, but Hunter has been my main the entire time. I've obviously played some difference. Um, at one point in time, I wouldn't say I completely mained, but I was our main healer at one point in time because our other healers were having massive issues. So I brought in a disc
that was
priest.
wasn't that when you raided with Casey and I wasn't playing at that time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Was that
I did.
what guild was that?
That was
Uh,
before us.
Yeah,
was
that
that
was
Panic?
No, that wasn't
No.
Strawberry Panic. Strawberry Panic was earlier than that, and then Strawberry Puppy Kisses was in between these two. So God, what I can't remember what the hell the guild was.
It was some minor guild though.
Yeah, it was a minor guild. We ended up actually server firsting one of them and Pandaria. But I don't know if I honestly don't fucking know how. I'm gonna be dead honest. I played in really good guilds. This guild, I would say there's a decent amount of people that I could take to a good guild, but that was not a good guild, and somehow we fucking server first it, and I was like, I haven't the slightest
So
clue how this happened.
to give you an
So
idea of how brutal the grind was back then, in order to just get potion or to get flasks. So in order to get flasks, you had to have, I believe it was a mage, and you had to go into Sholomance, pop this
Oh my
potion
god.
to get past all the trash as a ghost or some bullshit, and then you can make flasks on one single table that existed in the entire game. And so in order to just make a flask, you had to do one of the longest dungeons and get to the end.
yeah,
It is
well shit.
ridiculous.
I did undead side of strat so many fucking times because I was looking for bone slicing hatchets, which were fairly good at the time. Actually, pretty damn good before we were going into certain things, and it was a bitch. I did it. We did it once. We did it once with a pug because we always would do it with guild members. Well, we did it once with a pug, and wouldn't you know, one of the bone slicing hatchets dropped, and a fucking rogue took it. And
Oh.
Oh.
oh my god, was I fucking pissed off. So
Back from the days of ninja loot.
yeah, oh yeah. So we definitely had a ninja looter there, and that
And back in
ain't
the
gonna piss
day,
anybody off.
so we
But
kind of we kind of talked a little bit about the. Oh yes, I love this one. So
yeah, it's
back in the
fantastic.
day,
Red
like
Velvet.
we kind of talked a little bit about this, but
Blue.
the guilds back then and how the communities were, like your reputation actually mattered with other people. And so like if someone was a ninja looter, they got blacklisted. They couldn't even play on that character anymore. And that was part of the camaraderie of vanilla WoW, and like
Yeah, see,
you had to build rapport with people. You couldn't, like I had to, hey, I gotta go kill this quest mob.
hold it.
Gary, you
Hold
want to group up? Because it's too hard for myself.
Yep.
Yeah, that's just how the community was. Like,
And that's how you made friends.
when I was playing, like I said, BC dropped when I was just getting to level 40. I had never done a dungeon. Like,
Oh yeah, you came in.
ever.
Definitely came
Until
in late.
BC.
That's
Like,
crazy.
when you're coming in vanilla was a different beast because and BC was also. Don't get me wrong. The thing is though is you didn't have as many people leveling as you did in vanilla, where you're going through all that old content and you're like, oh my god, I can't even fucking beat a bear in a cave without 3 other people helping me, kind of thing.
That's
So
100% accurate. Like, I spent my day, like, I remember vividly, like, between 41 to 45, I there was no quest for me to do because I couldn't do them by myself.
yeah,
I was just going around just killing wild bears anywhere, like anything that was low enough. Where I remember I was playing a warrior, but I was an arms warrior back then. I would anything I could fight by myself and kill 2 or 3 things before I stopped to eat to heal
Yep.
myself.
oh dude,
That's just
I
what it was.
tried a warrior in vanilla. So like I said, I mained a hunter. It was my big thing. I had tried other classes, obviously. Druid was fun. I tried paladin. It was absolutely shitty. Um, it wasn't anything that I thought it would be. Kind of, my whole thought process was like, oh, this would be amazing. I'm a paladin. I'm this holy guy that can, heal but do damage, and it just wasn't fun. And then I went to a warrior, and I was a dwarf warrior, and I got out of their starting zone, and I went through that whole little cave and everything to get to the next
Yeah,
place.
to lock one down.
I got there, and I realized I hated it.
Yeah, reality set in. It's like,
It
oh, I
was
was lying to
I'm
myself.
killing one thing. I'm sitting here. I'm eating. I'm going and killing another thing. I'm eating. So that was not for me. That was that was definitely not for me. I mean, uh, obviously, when I first started, hunters were a complete and total afterthought. They were the last class created. We had massive freaking issues, but I was still having more fun than sitting and eating every damn time I killed something. So I mean that absolutely sucked beyond suck.
Oh yeah, like don't get me wrong, like as a warrior, like killing one thing and eating, you couldn't start killing multiple things like effectively without pushing yourself to the borderline of death until like almost level 20, and then even then the creatures had to be almost 2 to 3 levels lower than you.
And back then, so I remember the Warriors, they had three distinct major cooldowns, and it was Shield Wall, 30-minute
Yeah.
cooldown, Recklessness, 30-minute cooldown, and I can't remember the third one. Um, it was one that made you parry a lot. And so it
Uh,
was
are
meh.
are you talking the stances or actual
Actual
CDs?
CDs. And so like you and they all shared a cooldown. So like if you wanted to pull a bunch of shit and burn it down real quick, you'd burn Recklessness and then it'd be down for 30 minutes. And that was it. You know, I guess you're back to eating again.
Yeah, yeah. Enjoy spending a shit ton of food, money on food. And the other thing is so when I started on Zoeker, I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to be a skinner and a leather worker. It makes sense because, well, I'm
Mail
learning
armor.
leather
Yeah,
until
yeah.
leather at level
40.
40, and then I can make mail. And back then it actually was cool
It was
because you could do
dragon
the
spec, right? Or
the
something like
dragon
that.
scale. Like you could go one of two different ways. You could do the one that you would make leather, and then you could do the other one that you could make like dragon scale and stuff like that. So I went obviously dragon scale, so I could do the black dragon scale, the green dragon scale, so on and so forth. And it was actually, for me, I was very lucky because I went and farmed Unguro. And when I was farming
Oh
Unguro, I
yeah.
made a shit ton
Devil
of money because I could
Sores.
solo
Yeah.
Devil Source. So that was I was incredibly lucky to be able to do that. But it was costly. And then when I went over to my warrior, I was like, I'm gonna be a fucking miner and I'm gonna make
You're in
any of the plate
blacksmith.
stuff that I need. Dude, it costs so much. I was like,
So
well, I just made a copper bar, and I, was able to find like 3 of them out in the world.
So
So,
I remember the first time I ever went to Ngoro. I was trying to meet up with my buddy who got me to play on Wildhammer, and that was my orc shaman. And I go down in there, and I was like, "Oh, this is cool. It just got out of Silithus. It's a big old jungle." And I remember I get towards the entrance was on the southeast, and I get to the northern end of the crater, hugging that east wall, and I go around a tree, and there's a fucking devil sword. I just start screaming, dude. I'm
That
just like,
is
ah!
frightening. People still go. I still go there every now and then just to check it out because
Me too.
that place is just so unique
It's so
amongst
cool.
all the places that are in World of Warcraft. That's just I will never forget about the crater.
And
Yeah, yeah. The
growing up
crater
as
is it,
a kid, I fucking loved dinosaurs, so it was like my favorite zone ever. You're
yeah.
saying, Pete?
No, it's amazing. Like I loved Girl. It's green. I mean, it's in the middle of all this desert shit. Um, and so it's green. It's lush. It's awesome. I don't think I didn't go to Nguro until after I was 60, anyways. Oh wait. No, I did do some questing there, and then because when I hit 60, I was actually in Eastern Plague Lands. I had done some weird shit and ended up in Eastern Plague Lands instead of Western Plague Lands, and
Yeah,
so
you're on the wrong side of the tracks if you're in the Eastern
yeah.
Plaguelands.
So I'm over in Eastern Plague Lands, and then obviously, I was like, fuck, I hit 60. This is fucking amazing. I was on an old farmstead that had been overrun by not undead, but whatever the hell they were calling them at the time, and so that's where I dinged 60, and I was like, holy shit. So yeah, that was pretty awesome.
So, we talked about kind of our second favorite raid. What would be your guys' favorite raid of all time, and why?
Of all time, not
Yes.
just like okay, let's say of all time, probably Lich King. It's gotta be Wrath.
And you mean ICC?
Oh yeah, ICC. No, don't get me wrong. I like Nax, but ICC is most definitely. Uh, it ICC was the turnaround. Like the fights were difficult as they were. There was a lot of like I said, that's kind of where I really got into raiding, as it were. But I remember vividly being on Professor Putricide and just wiping over and over and over, and just listening to him do his speech when you walk into the room, just over and over and over. Just hearing good news still gives me wakening terrors.
Good news.
But
Good
like
news.
just everything about that raid, and not just that raid, but like I'd have to say about 80% of that just whole just expansion, like it just hit home with me. Like you have undead Valkyries over here. You have an undead like demon king basically raising the dead for all across this whole island, and he's trying to conquer it, and no one knows why. And then eventually they start getting into it, and you realize there's a bunch of actual somewhat good reasons behind why he's doing this. But at the same time, like it's a bad thing. Like it all just came together in such a good way that like it just clicked with me, where I could when I wasn't in game, all I could think about was being in game. Like it was
Yeah.
just that good for me. Like
That,
no matter
that's
what I did or where I was, like even in like that zone where ICC is located. What is it? The Pit of
Northrend.
Sauron.
Oh yeah.
Like just that single region. It's just bleak. It's gray. Uh, it's nothing but undead there with like the paladins. It like that. It was just so good that when I was running to get to ICC for the first time, I had to run through all the undead to get up to the gates, and then you had to watch them break the gate down. Like it just blew my mind because there was at least 15 other people like running with me, and we're just running across this landscape, just killing everything in our way, getting to this gate. It felt like we were laying siege and breaking in to go kill the Lich King.
yeah. It was that is one of my top ones. Also, it was a fantastic.
So
That was. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that was the first time where they did the gated one, correct? Where it's like we released one part, then we released the second
yeah.
part, then we
Uh,
released the third part.
Mm,
Uh,
yes.
I believe
Yes, it
that's
was.
correct. Because I think that, they were kind of releasing it in tier.
Yeah, so
Because the raids leading up to it were Naxxramas, which was not gated. You had Ulduar, which was not technically gated because of Algalon. That there might be an argument there. Trial of Crusader was not gated, and then you had ICC, and that was gated.
I think that was the first time it was gated, which was kind of cool also at the time. I don't know if it necessarily would work nowadays. I mean, maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't, especially since you're seeing the world first races, and since that's such a huge thing. But dude, ICC was just that was a fantastic raid. The whole lead up was amazing because obviously all of us, Lich King is godly to
And
all of
and he's
us.
in your face the whole expansion,
Exactly.
There's
And
not
taunting
a
you.
quest chain where he is not mentioned, and like you can't feel his effect on the land of where you're questing. Like there's how many, I can't even remember how many quests there are, but I felt like almost every time you're doing a quest chain and like it started to ramp up in such a way that like you're coming to the climax of the chain, the Lich King or one of his like direct followers were like right there, and like he was either speaking to you or his follower was, and it was like, well, you're always a thorn in his side, and he's sending his forces against you to stop you because he doesn't want you to get to where he's at. And I don't know about you guys, but like an extremely large memorable moment is at the gates.
Oh,
When
Wrathgate, right?
yeah, like you're
So
fighting
good.
like the two sides, Horde and Alliance are fighting together, just fighting the undead, and then you have like the Forsaken faction that just starts laying waste, and then Wormrest Temple dragons come through. Like there was so much happening in just that one cutscene. That's like
yeah, it's
all this is way beyond me. I'm that one guy up on that cliff watching this go down.
And back then, I want to say even to this day, that's one of the most watched and powerful cinematics to this day.
no, I would agree. It's absolutely freaking amazing. And like you bring up the whole Lich King thing chasing you. I mean, good God, you had dungeons
You had
that
a
led up
dungeon
to
where
him
he does
that is
that.
chasing you. That you're like, oh shit, I
That's the
gotta get
boss
out of here.
fight. Run away.
I mean, how awesome is that? That you have an entire dungeon set around it. I mean, it was very, very cool. I mean, you could do all three in a row, which I had done several times and got lucky enough to actually get the hilt dropped at one point in time. But it was just, it was fantastic. Like I remember getting the hilt. It was amazing. But the whole thing was just so fun of running all of it, and it meant something. Like compare, like you're doing halls of reflection, and you have this badass dude you're having to fight, and majority of people are wiping anyways on the first frickin' boss.
Yeah.
Your last boss, it's crazy because you have to continuously keep in front of him and be like, okay, break this shit down, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, and it was amazing. It was everything. That was probably the last time I would say that they really had a great character that had influence throughout the entire time, the entire expansion from top to bottom. Um,
The
they
one
had a
before
great
that would have
character.
been Illidan, and
Yeah,
even then,
Uh
not
huh.
even as much. Not even as much. Wrath of the
No,
Lich King
not
was
he was always referenced and mentioned, but you hardly
yeah,
saw him.
and I loved Illidan. I mean, don't get me wrong, I loved Warcraft 3, so playing it, Illidan was an amazing, both of them
so.
were huge for me. And then seeing Illidan, it's cool. But once you got to the whole Lich King thing, it was it was you knew that the whole Lich King thing was in your face the entire time. Everything that you fought, you came to one of the two first places, and it wasn't completely nasty. But by the time you got to where his entire realm of his place where you're questing at, that whole thing was just decimated, and it was completely what you're like, okay, yeah.
This is a
Well,
war, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
he was
exactly.
an ever-present threat, and it
Yeah.
worked perfectly for their story.
Oh God,
Because
yes, it did.
like when you started getting like lost in the weeds, it's like, okay, I've been helping this tribe on this coast for so long. Like, I finally have a quest that's having me move back inland to this new region. I don't know anything about it. Like as you start moving in that direction, you start seeing like the hordes of the undead just pouring out of the pit, just spreading everywhere. Then you have like the electric dwarves. I can't remember what they were called.
Stormforged.
Thank you. The
Yeah.
Stormforged dwarves, like coming from Old War, like everything was coming together so much, and like just as you're starting to forget, like just for a split second, you were forgetting that the Lich King is out there. All of a sudden, like he's back. Like he makes an appearance, and it's just like, oh yeah, that's right. Like you're this problem. Then all of a sudden, you have to go kill all these undead, and then you have to split off to go do something else. And then you always come back, just right back onto the Lich King, because
Yeah.
everything just comes back to him.
So
And it's not weak. Whereas, you look nowadays and you're like, oh well, there's some stuff going on, and who cares?
So
Back then everything was
yeah,
focusing on it. Go
like
ahead. I'm sorry, Scott. Go ahead.
I was actually just gonna ask you, Pete, what was your favorite raid
So,
of all time?
of all time, that's a difficult one, but I think my favorite raid of all time might actually be in that same expansion, just a little bit before it. So Old War was
Yeah, knew it.
amazing. Dude, just starting off with the first boss completely and totally different than anything that we had ever faced.
Oh yeah.
With getting in, you're riding machines, and certain people are shooting shit out of the air so you can get, the fuel, so you can keep in, and then you have to shoot it. And I remember a lot of times I was on the motorcycle and running around in circles.
Motorcycle was the best, for sure.
Oh god, dude, the motorcycle was so fun.
I would fight people for that.
You guys got lucky. I was always on the catapult arm.
Really? My guild actually at that point in time was like, you're going on the motorcycle because you know what you're doing with this, and because I was like, okay, cool, I freaking love the motorcycle, so that's more than okay with me. But the entire thing, it was just an incredibly massive, epic thing. Like you go back now, and it's not nearly like this. You look at Throne of Thunder, and Throne of Thunder is just long. I mean, it's long, but it's not necessarily long in the correct way of
So-
like, holy, it's like
it's just a drag out slugfest.
exactly. There's a lot of times like you look at. I liked Throne of Thunder, but there was a lot where I was like, Jesus, could we just get to the point? I mean,
Yeah, it's like
fuck,
give me some shortcuts. Like this, I'm not enjoying this anymore.
So
No.
Throne of Thunder was always touted as like the new Old War.
Yeah, and that's why I brought it up there also is it there was cool things. I liked certain parts of Throne of Thunder, but it was just good God, man. I felt like I was doing things that just didn't matter. And obviously when you go back and you're doing Ulduar now, you're like, oh, okay, I just wish I could get to this point or whatever, but really it's compact when you think about it. You start the first boss. It's amazing.
You can skip the
especially
next
nowadays,
two.
that you're not trying for an achievement or killing things on the sides or anything else like that. The next two are right next to each other. You run down the straightaway and you're to XT and you kill him. I mean, it's so
It flows
fun.
well.
It flows well. It's an epic. The storyline is incredibly epic, and that's kind of one of the whole things of the keeper. I mean, like everything, you're like, holy shit, there's a lot more going on than. I mean, not at all dissing the Lich King or anything else like that, but there's a lot more shit going on in this whole world. And
So-
we had been introduced to it in vanilla back when we were like in the AQ and stuff like that, but all of a sudden now it means a lot more. You're actually seeing the craziness, and you're seeing these guys that were placed here to supposedly protect this place being influenced by the bad stuff, and it's amazing. It's great. The whole old god thing. I love the whole this whole setup because of from the Titans and everything else. So that is, I think, my favorite one. It was just a very well done raid.
So one of the cool things about Old War that I really wanted to bring up was it was also one of the first raids, if I remember right, and maybe one of the only raids. There's only a handful that I think do this, where if you played the fight in a certain way, you activated a hard mode. And so like in the
Like that,
first
that
fight,
Yep.
it was avoid the main towers. In
yep.
fucking XT, it was like you gotta just like destroy the heart, and other parts like that, fighting the three dudes in a certain order. So like you activated hard mode through the fight, and it was such a cool mechanic that I feel like Old War is still the benchmark raid because of how interesting they made those mechanics work. And I just don't you don't see that a lot in a lot of raids today, is where okay, well, if I do this thing a certain way, then it activates hard mode, and then I can get extra better loot. But it is truly hard, and so I think it harkens. Everything that we do today in terms of mythic rating harkens back to Old War. Everything that we do now, like now we just flip a switch, and now it's like super hard mode. But back then you had to do something for it.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
like not I don't comparing old raids to new raids is like that's a whole conversation on its own. But like you gotta remember, like these older raids that we've chosen as our favorite, probably because when you decided to raid, like it was a whole week affair, not a 2 day thing. Where raids now, you go through the whole raid in an hour and a
Shit.
half.
Exactly. Yeah, you can destroy an entire. I mean, shit. Look at the new raid. I mean, we
Yeah,
walk in completely and totally. Not only just a couple of us have watched a little bit of videos, but we don't do anything. We just walk in and are like, da, 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 da. Okay, well,
So
we killed that thing.
I as we stated earlier, I'm currently the raid leader, and I knew zero things about that raid, and I switched to tank for it. That's just
and the two main tanks weren't even there for the beginning of the first few fights.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like I
So
was gonna get off and go to bed, and I jumped back in because well, cold medicine had taken control at that point. But I jumped in, and Scott was practicing his tanking because he's gonna help cover the main tank being gone, so he's gonna be my off tank for a while. And like we tanked it, and I had no idea what was
me
going on.
neither. Zero clue.
I'm DPSing. I
Yeah.
didn't do like there was times where I was like, I'm not even gonna pop my bigs. Like I didn't even pop Bestial Wrath at certain times because I was like, all right, am I gonna have to move right away? What am I gonna have to do? I don't want to put too much DPS on this one. I mean, like it was a joke. I know heroic's gonna be a lot harder. I'm pretty damn sure
Oh,
if
we're gonna struggle
Blizzard
bus.
has any common sense, they'll make Mythic like next level killer. So
They
instead of
almost have to.
Obzen,
I mean, like
they have to because
as we
Limit gets
said,
it a day earlier than Method.
we
I mean,
went
you've got two goddamn bosses.
we
So
went and did this raid like right after we got our head of the curve on Jaina. Like we several of our people logged off because a raid leader Scott said like if you guys want to get off you can, otherwise those who want to stay we'll go take a look at the new raid. We walked in for shits and giggles. Like
for shits and
we did
giggles.
what 3 attempts on the first boss and then beat it, and
Yeah,
then
and
One
we
shot
went
the
to that
second
one
one,
dungeon,
yeah.
and we if you look at everybody on our server, we killed both bosses faster than anybody else on our. And these are people that are rating. Well, I mean, obviously we don't have great. We used to have great one and benched, but I don't know what happened to them. But uh, these are people that we outperformed, not even trying. Just like if we were trying, we could have one shot both bosses and walked out of the entire place in 30 to 40 minutes.
Yeah, and like anyone who watches this and wants to call us out on it, like, don't get us wrong. We did this on normal. Like,
Yeah,
we
it's not
we always
heroic. It's
do it on
not
normal.
mythic.
Our guild,
Yep.
We're a
our
casual
way of
guild.
doing stuff is we do it. We won't move to heroic unless we beat it on normal, unless we hit a wall, and then we'll do like the first few bosses of heroic so we can overpower that wall.
Yeah, and we have several reasons for that. Part of which is we are kind of a casual guild. We do have a decent amount of people that have a good background where you could be like, okay, we are going to go heroic and then we're going to go into mythic, but we also, being a more casual and more friendly, like especially family friendly guild, I suppose, we have a good amount of people also that are having issues with mechanics or getting certain things down. So pushing into that next level,
Yeah.
the way that we're doing it is pretty insane. Like I think it's pretty damn good when you look at the whole picture.
Well, and
So,
we have 6 hours a week. That's it. We only do
yep.
6 hours a week of rating, and that's pretty strict.
Well, yeah,
And
you look
we
at
don't
another
do
guild
more. We
that's
don't
doing
do less. And like some of
six
these,
days a week,
some
six
of our
days a
people,
week,
yeah.
4 hours a day, and we still beat them. Come on, dude. I
Well,
mean,
and we have some people that they only play during those 6 hours, so there's
yep.
not a lot of time that they're putting in to get better.
No neck, no, no extra farming on mythic pluses, no anything. So yeah, so we are obviously assisting them along, but at the same time, I mean, if we need to sit them, we sit them, but we also aren't just kicking them to the curb. I mean, we obviously could. We could remake the guild, but I don't know if anybody would enjoy it as much as the
No, I
the
think
guild is right now. I
we,
like it too much.
with all of our time that we've put into this game, a lot of us are just pretty okay with just, we're just gonna do 6 hours and have fun with it with our friends. Like the whole point of the guild is just to go on cool adventures with our friends.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And this, I mean,
literally.
shit. We went into Brawler's Guild the other day, and it was a blast, an absolute blast compared to, some of the. I think a lot of us were burnt out from other things, and that was an incredible amount of fun. Like, uh, I just had a blast. I mean, like, I
It
had
was
already
fun.
done Brawler's Guild, but I was having more fun than the entire time that I had beaten it because I was there with buddies. We were, smashing down things. We're
I
throwing in
streamed it.
stupid
It
stuff.
was fun.
Yeah, yeah, it was fun. It was. Those are things that we need to do occasionally, also. And I also one of the reasons that I've really liked this guild a lot, and part of it is I do wish Epic was still back here, but the whole Christmas thing and certain other times with the gift giving and the other stuff, that's awesome. That's what you need in a guild. That, I think that helps bring unity together a little better because
I mean,
instead of just saying, screw it, we're raiding and who
we're all
cares, this
very
and that.
supportive of each other, and we respect each other's real life too. I mean, we what was it? I lost my mom a couple months back, and it was like you guys were like, okay, you need to not raid, and I was like, I'm raiding this week, and then I'm going back next week. But everyone was the outpouring of support was phenomenal.
Yeah, and that was a huge, and I definitely knew where you're coming from because there's a lot of times where this is this gets you away from the real world. You can
Yes.
hop in, it takes your mind off of all of the other crap that's going on. You don't have to deal with that. You have supportive friends, and it's awesome. And that's what I do like about this guild is, um, I know when Legion was first coming out, Benched had approached me and asked me if I wanted to go there, and I was like, no, dude, no, no, I am more than happy to stay in the guild. Are we next level like hitting things? No, but it doesn't matter to me at this point in time. I've already done that. That doesn't, and not
Yeah,
only that, but I don't have the time, nor do I care. I mean, I think that's the other problem is I'd rather be hanging out with friends, even if they're some other new friends that we've met in the guild itself, and hang out with them than do other things where eventually that everything's just going to break apart because they're trying too hard and it doesn't matter and no one gives a shit except about will we downed these bosses or this raid. This one is a lot more of we are a family, and which is good to me because I mean shit, Gary and I spent hours on end in a freaking garrison watching.
this is fucking
it,
squats guy.
it wasn't even the first time like either.
No,
It
no.
was just the longest time. Like frequently, just after raid, like instead of getting off and being the adult I should have been and like going to bed and getting ready for work next morning, so I wasn't dragging, I'd sit around with Pete and just talk about stupid shit, and
Oh, the
then
dumbest
find the
stuff. I
most
mean, like,
random shit.
but it's so fun, and that's what you need. I think that's especially once you get past that point of like, oh, I've got to be the best. I've got to do this. I got to do that. that doesn't get you really anywhere. I mean, yeah, it might for a few months or whatever, but it's so much more fun just to hang out and do stupid stuff of, well, 1 in the morning, and we didn't do anything except BS about stupid stuff and watch some dumbass either in our garrison or somewhere else do something stupid. So I mean, I think that's part of what makes this guild right now currently fun and really good is we have brought in a lot of people that that are learning the game and are progressing really well, but also are good enough people. So I think that's
Yeah.
another thing is they can handle
So
our crap also.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's a big part of it.
we definitely need to have like those random bits. Like this is a fairly kind of random thing. Like the last time we did this was what 2 3 months ago,
I want
maybe.
to say 3 months ago.
Yeah, it was a long time.
And like
Way too
that
long.
was just an offhand. Like I think I had just like asked Pete. It was like, "Hey Pete, you want to go waste some time?" Or like he asked me. I really don't remember how it came to be, but Scott just happened to be in chat with us, and he asked what we are doing, and we were just shooting shit because we had nothing else to do.
Yeah,
And that's how we ended up in Iron Forge.
Yep.
which
Where
was
where
absolutely
were we?
hilarious.
So
Because I was like,
Were we in Zandalar when we decided to get there? Because
yeah,
it was literally
yeah,
an off-topic comment about old Iron Forge, and I had never been there. And
yep,
it's like,
that's
well,
what it
I'd like
was.
to
We're
see
like,
it.
oh,
And
we're
it's like, well,
going.
let's go. And it's
yep.
like,
So
well,
I
we'll
was like,
show you.
follow me. We're going down there, and it's crazy because I've been there. So I used to be the old Iron Forge, but you had
When it
to
was like an
kind of
airfield.
yeah, you kind of had to hack through down there also and everything else. But the new old Iron Forge is kind of cool, and I had just recently been there. I was dinking around on an alt of mine on that side, and I was like, this is the perfect place. Um, and I think the funniest part was those stupid little guards that occasionally would spawn and walk back and forth only to be destroyed instantly.
And then the
So
random dwarves that would come down and hang out with us for like 10 minutes,
exactly.
popping all
Like
their
they would
toys.
hang out and be like, "Hey, how you doing?" I mean, like, who in the hell is going down there anyways? Like, you're questioning all of a sudden. You're like, okay, I just walked past the king,
This
and
fucking
what's
dwarf
down
comes
here?
down there, and all he sees is a campfire, a ton of like weird ass little pets, three birdmen dancing with like
uh,
different shadowy effects on them, just like walking
oh man,
around. Like it was,
it was
it was the
fantastic.
most intense scene of toys I've ever seen.
We definitely are going to have to go down there again, just because I think because there is a decent area to kind of sit and hang out.
We just have to kill
Um,
a guard every 10 minutes. It
yeah, we just
keeps
go
Yeah.
every
keeps
once in
Pete
a
from
while.
logging out.
Well, I mean, I'll just send my pet onto it and destroy it. So, we'll
We'll just
So,
see the pet go off randomly, and we'll be like,
oh
"Oh,
my
yep, there,
god.
it's feeding time."
Yep, there he
yeah,
goes. So,
the guard made it back.
oh my goodness. Yeah.
So one of the other things I wanted to mention was that uh, I was reading a Reddit thread the other day of why people quit playing video games, and I think a lot of that reflects into kind of why we do play this game together. And a lot of people is like, I don't have time. I got kids, family. I got bills to pay. A lot of it was like, I'm putting all this time and I'm getting nothing out of it. And so I think a lot of what we do is we're not trying to put time into the game. We're trying to put time into each other. And so
Yeah,
we're
like
spending time
I'm
with each other.
we're getting on to hang out. Like, yeah, like doing stuff in game together is obviously like it's fun depending on what the content is, obviously. But like, I'm not in here for the content. Like, if I was, and like I would have left and found a guild that like rated harder because then I would have been like in that content the whole time. But I'm here just to hang out with you guys. Like, if you guys weren't rating, and I don't know if I would have still been
I
here.
wouldn't be playing. Absolutely not.
I that's a huge thing for me also is because it's really weird because I had kind of kicked things to the curb before Casey and Scott brought me back in. And what was crazy with all this is all of a sudden, not only did I have real life friends that were playing, Casey, where the hell are you? But
Son of a
but
bitch.
then there's a ton of other people that you meet through there and everything. I mean, like, I have no qualms whatsoever, even with Jake. Like I said, I mean that shit was a shitty breakup, but that is not something I hold against any of us on that.
Yeah, it was
It's
just it was just a poor management
it
problem
was,
that we blew out of proportion.
and it was definitely one of those things I wish would have went a lot smoother. I think in the end it did help us out because there were some people that were incredibly pissed off about the things, but it definitely went wrong. But that shit happens, and we're strong anyways as a guild, and we see it. I mean, like, holy shit. I mean, the other day we have an individual that is progressing in the way that she plays the game and was one of the last people standing on our Jaina kill. That was
Yeah,
absolutely amazing.
our
That was
our
one
two
of
member alive
that was
ahead of the
absolutely
curve
amazing.
kill.
And I think that's one of the greatest things for her. Like, it was one of those things that was kind of a slap in the face for a lot of people. And I love it. I absolutely love it because it does show that her progression has been amazing for us. And that's what we want. We don't necessarily, I don't I don't want to say anybody. Let's be honest. It's going to come to the point where unfortunately there are going to be some of those that are set just for progression wise, but holy shit, dude. What she proved, I think, to herself also was amazing. And I love that because we downed her.
Well,
We're
not
we're
not
on
only
to the next.
that, but it not only boosted her self confidence, but it was like we'd seen this person struggle and struggle and struggle through the entire raid, and was kind of the butt of several jokes. And for her to be the last person standing on the most important progression fight that we've had in a long while was
Oh,
just like,
yeah. Oh yeah.
hey, what happened to the rest of you fucks that were making fun of her? You know, you
That was
know.
Exactly.
definitely like parent watching child grow up moment. Like I'm a tank for our raid for God's sakes, and I died. Like I wasn't the first to die, but like I died. Like the raid surviving depends on me and the other tank. Like obviously with the healers and the other DPS, but like we're that first line of defense. If we fall,
Game
it's
over.
yeah, it's over. Like you can hold on for a while, but it's over. And
Dude,
we got that kill in that literal fucking 15-second difference between the tanks dying to the last DPS dying.
oh, it was insane because usually obviously I'm one of the last ones because I mean feign death and everything else that I can do, turtle, so on and so forth. I'm down, and I'm like, well, who do we even have standing? I mean, it honestly was at that point because there were so many of us that were ice blocked at that point in time that I was like, oh shit, we are
We were so
really.
close. I just remember that
I was
I was saying I can't. I was just sitting there. I swear to God, if Amethyst and Felina get this, I'm gonna blow a gasket and it dies, and I just start squealing.
like
Yeah,
and what was crazy with it is I was one of the last ones to get into an ice block. So what I'm trying to do is multi-shot, 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 and I was like, if I can at least get 3 people out, we're good to. And I'm in a goddamn ice block. And then I look around and I was like, is there anybody? We got a couple left. And I was like, well, we have God left, and He's healing. and,
yeah. I was like, he
and
might be able to do something.
both of our priests are down because you see two damn big
Guardian
angels.
angels.
And then I mean, it was amazing because it was enough DPS from her and enough heals from her, and she was healing herself also because I know she had said something about how she was doing that, but it was fantastic. She did exactly what she needed to do in that moment. It wasn't too big of a moment for her, which is huge. It's huge. That's what we need, those kind of moments for a lot of our players because it shows they can get to that point. And I really hope that our players kind of not just look at what they can be by looking at logs or whatever else, but something like that because it gives a massive boost
It
of
was a
confidence.
run of the mill raider that's been struggling the whole progression is what got us a kill.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and it's
That's a very
fantastic.
inspirational moment.
Yeah, it
it
is.
is.
I mean, like
I
there,
and she probably won't, but I hope she never forgets it
I
ever.
I agree. She was ecstatic, and I talked to her the day after. I've talked to her, and she needs to be, because that is that moment that everybody needs. Everybody needs one of those kind of moments where they just, you know, you're kind of the hero. I mean, she was the hero.
She was the hero that night. Like,
Yeah.
it, I'm ecstatic for her. Like,
I am too.
I
I'm
wish we
so
could have
happy.
like clean killed Jaina. Like, 80% of the raid alive, and like mechanics being done well, but like we had been struggling so hard up to that point that we were all ready for to get that kill in any way possible.
Oh God, yes. God, and that was, if anybody would have taken bets, that would have been one of those ones where you would have
Someone would have got a
placed a
million
dollar,
dollars.
Oh yeah.
placed a dollar and won $1 million. That would have been that kind of thing. But I think it was absolutely fucking fantastic.
So
It was great. It was awesome to see the new tactic that we did. People stuck to it incredibly
they
quickly.
picked it
Like,
up quick. Yeah.
oh my God, they picked things up so fast.
I was not expecting the raid to come together that quickly.
Yeah,
We have
I
had mechanic
we had
issues in
those
the
moments.
past. I mean, obviously, Living Legends is one of those. Sometimes we just plow through things with our strength instead of actual mechanics, but we picked up mechanics incredibly quickly. And obviously the one thing that did really screw us there at the end was the orb. Is that orb that came down at the end?
Yeah, that
We
last orb
didn't
is
have
what
enough
froze us.
didn't have enough people soaking it, and I think we
So,
had one person in it. So
well, I'm gonna take us back to the talking point of favorite raids real quick, and the reason I'm gonna do that is so I'll state what my favorite raid was, and then we can go ahead and start to wind down the podcast so Gary can get some sleep for work.
Yay!
So my
I gotta be awake in 4 hours almost.
oh no,
Oh,
so I'll
whew.
try to make this quick then. So my favorite raids were Old War and ICC and stuff like that. And so my number one favorite is ICC, and I'll briefly touch on that, and then I'm gonna mention a different raid. And so for ICC, it was my favorite because that was the time when peak Obzen was a thing, and Pete and I have so many stories about peak Obzen that it's insane. Uh, but I remember at that time I had 7 max level characters that I was farming. What was it? Heroic dungeon every day for the orb, so I can
Magic.
get
Oh.
for so I can get Shadowmourne. So I farmed all of Shadowmourne pretty much by myself until um, the shards. And the shards, I started getting defaulted in my guild because I was literally the only person that was ready for them. The only
Yeah,
one. Um,
I remember like the people in raids like having those weapons. It was never more than one per raid. Like,
so
it just
it,
didn't work that way.
it was a big deal. So on my server, at that point in that guild, I was like on the 6th rank guild at that time, and I had gotten all but like 3 shards, and I that guild kind of fell apart due to weak leadership, and I joined the number 3 guild. It was number 2 on the horde, um, and that spot always kind of fluctuated because we had a guild transfer in that was much better just to get realm first because they weren't shit on their server, but they were better
yeah,
than us.
yep, I
And then
remember them
we
transferring
competed
in.
with the number 1 alliance guild, so we were always back and forth, and we got several realm firsts on in our guild, but I remember I joined the alt raid because I was a trial, and I was absolutely top DPS, number 1 every fight. But I did not have Shadowmourne, and so the at that time they were farming Shadowmourne for someone else as a warrior, and he had to miss the normal raid, and so he was in the alt raid with me, and so he got the first like 2 shards or something, and I only had 1 left to get, and so he got his Shadowmourne right after I want to say Gunship, and then I got mine literally the next fight, and so him and I got Shadowmourne the same night, and uh, it was just a memorable experience being a part of this really high-end progression guild where not only were we high in progression, we were also very high in PvP. That's when I earned Arena Master, and I earned Arena Master with that warrior. Me and that warrior went fucking hamskis and got like 2200 plus in every bracket. Um, and so ICC was very memorable because of that, and not only that, but the fights were also very, very. They were complex, they were fun, they were mechanically heavy. They also had a lot of the same hard mode mechanics that Old War had, that made it a lot more fun to try to push your raid. And so ICC was memorable for that reason, and also because I played so much back then. I mean, my favorite story is still when Pete was getting ganked and I fucking came out of the stars with a fishing pole and overalls and beat the shit out of this dude multiple times, just ganked him, and he was like, "What? We're the same level, and I'm in heroic raiding gear. Why is this guy in overalls beating my ass?" And this is before transmogs, so like what you saw is what you got.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it was amazing. I mean, here I am leveling up over there. I'd come back into the game, and fucking there Scott is beating the hell out of somebody in frickin' overalls and a fishing pole. And I was like, hey, cool, thanks, man. I was like, this guy keeps ganking us over and over. And I was like, it's in a really crap place to even get out to try to do
I
anything
ganked
else.
him so hard he logged off for the night.
Yes, he did.
Um, and so anyway, that was my number one. But another raid that really contests that spot for me, and this one probably will come a little bit out of left field, is Karazhan.
Oh, no,
Karazhan
and
was the
Karazhan.
first
Oh,
raid of Burning
Karazhan.
Crusade, and it was a
Oh.
10 man, and it was a very long instance. But it was so cool. You're in the middle of this Deadwind Pass of a major lore character, Medivh, and you're in his tower, in his home, and you're going through and you're trying to fight all these things that are remnants of his past, and like you're going through all these major lore moments. You're doing all these crazy mechanically heavy fights, and it was just a really fun time. And that was when I was a healer. I was a shaman healer, and I just remember that being one of my favorite progressions of all time. And on top of that, it also had some of the more interesting mechanics like Nightbane, and uh, the chess event was also major. Prince Malchazar was a pain in the ass, and that was a really like you had to have a specific strat to do it. It was just a phenomenal experience. And
No,
so
I completely agree. Karazhan, holy cow.
Blast
Karazhan
from the
was,
past, man.
oh my god, I loved it so much. Like when they redid it, and actually I need to go back now and get the mount since I never got that. But the first Karazhan was, I remember going in there, and obviously we were in a rather large uh, guild, so we're breaking it down into different ones. So it's kind of a race amongst our own guild. But holy crap, it was so, everything in there was just very fun. It was a very well put together raid. You look, um, you look at all the vanilla raids, and they're really sloppy when you look at them nowadays. Um, I think maybe Zoeker was one of the better put together ones if you look back, because Molten Core was just a slap together, slop fest. Um, I have great memories of it, but
Me too, yeah.
um, but you look at a lot of the vanilla raids and they were pretty crap, and then all of a sudden you get Karazhan and you're like, holy cow,
Next level.
this is
This is
what a
next
raid
level
could
good.
be.
Yeah.
So, it had like you said, a great story. It had great characters within it. It had great fights. Um, I remember at that point in time, we were using on Rose, we were using Shadow Priests because we could get our mana back at that. But remember Vampiric?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
You
And
had to
so
have a Shadow Priest.
we were using Shadow Priest. I mean, it was really cool. I mean, they'll never do this again because they're not going to, because they don't want to make you have to use
Use,
or
yep.
not use a certain class. But I thought it was amazing to bring in not only a certain class but a certain spec within there, and it was so fun. I liked the entire the entire raid was really fun. God damn, it was a long raid. I mean, shit, that kind of reminds me, looking back at Black Rock Mountain kind of shit, how long things were within there even. But it was good. It was fantastic. I thought they did a great job. That's a good one.
All right. Well, we'll go ahead and we'll wind down there. Is there any last thoughts that we want to get out there?
If we're gonna have this be kind of like a continuation thing, should we maybe, I don't know, bring up a topic to do over until the next time we do this
Hmm.
and discuss it?
I think what we should bring into the next one should be the Battle of Destara lore opinions, both lore and raid-wise, and
Wow,
potentially.
we're gonna run this into the ground real fast then, huh?
Ah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a good opener. It gets us talking again.
You're
Sure,
not
it has
wrong.
banned your account.
Oof, yeah. Say, well, nice playing WoW with you guys.
Okay. Okay. How about you guys mention something?
No, no,
No,
I
no,
don't
no.
mind
I
talking.
I
It's
honestly
just
think that's a good one to bring up because I do as much harsh things as I do. I do have some okay positives
yeah.
along the road as well. I mean, obviously there's a massive amount of negatives, especially since I've played
It's really controversial
on
at the moment.
Alliance and
That's why I
Horde
want to
side.
talk about it.
But no, I think it's a great topic to bring up and discuss, and really, in all honesty, everybody should be thinking about it at this point in time.
Well,
So,
and
I mean,
as
you
we
pay for to play this game. It's not like they're paying you to play this game.
Well, and as we're moving into the next tier of content, we can reflect upon, how it was as raiders, how it was for me as a raid leader, how it was for Gary as a tank. We can get into a little more of the dynamics of actual raiding versus nostalgic trip down memory lane.
Yeah. Say that normally the nostalgic bottle episode doesn't happen until way down, way past the beginning. The good
Well,
news is we got the bottle episode out of the way.
exactly, it's out of the way. And not only that, but little it's a fun little one to reminisce, and this is the perfect way I think to start is just like we started a bunch of noobs having no clue what the hell they're doing anyways. It's a great way that we started this podcast, a bunch of noobs that have no clue what we're doing.
Yeah,
So
basically. Say as far as podcasts go, and I listen to quite a few podcasts with my kind of line of work is like we do not have a good structure.
no, but I kind of like it like that because it's off the wall, but at the same time, I mean, since I'm illiterate, I can't listen to podcasts.
Yeah, no, I get you. My eye patch really makes it hard to listen.
But
All right, we'll go ahead and we'll end it there, and then
sounds
we'll
good.
pick this up next week, hopefully.
Well, I guess did
Go
we
ahead.
settle on a name?
I think Unwelcomed Squatters is a pretty good one. What about you guys?
Okay. I still like the word squatters. I think it's just that first word just doesn't quite symbolize what we're looking for.
We'll have to. Well, how about the topic for the next one is we have to come up with the first word of the
the
podcast
first
name.
word of the squatters.
Something squatters.
Something Squatters podcast.
The something squatter.
Yeah, something squatters. I just like the
Uh,
word squatters. I think it's perfect. But you're
no,
right.
I think the squatters are the perfect one. I mean, shit, we've been sitting around here so long that I even logged off an accident. So
Oh yeah, we can start calling ourselves the Squatter Cast.
There you go.
Squat cast.
The Squat Cast.
All right, guys.
Uh,
Well, I'm gonna go ahead and end the stream there, and thank you guys for taking the time.
Thanks,
yeah,
Scott.
If anyone listens to this, thank you for listening.
The
and,
whole 3 people.
Yeah,
Hey,
and
yeah.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Mom.
Right, and yeah, no, thank you, Scott, for deciding to put this up. I mean, this was. I knew we would do this again. I didn't know you were going to make a cast out of it, but
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's
like I
have no problem with it being that way. And
yeah, if anybody has listened, eventually we will get good. I mean, I'm not saying when, but eventually
like
we'll
we
be
said,
listenable.
yeah, like we said, it's all about conditioning.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And we didn't come in the correct condition in this point. So, got to start
Alrighty.
somewhere.
Well, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Bye.